The ruins smelled of burnt metal and ash. Jake Morrison moved through the destroyed buildings with his rifle ready, but his real focus was on the medical kit strapped to his back. 3 years into this war, and he still hated carrying a gun more than bandages. The Velcrin settlement had been abandoned 2 days ago, or so Command had told them. But Jake had learned not to trust intelligence reports. The alien race had proven unpredictable since the war began, and empty cities had a way of becoming death traps. His squad spread out through the rubble. Corporal Pete Hayes moved ahead, checking corners. Private Amy Ross covered their 6. 5 other soldiers picked through the debris, looking for anything useful. Weapons, supplies, information. Anything that might help humanity win this impossible war. Jake heard it before the others did. A small sound barely louder than the wind whistling through broken walls. Crying. A child crying. He raised his fist, signaling the squad to stop. Hayes looked back at him with annoyance, but Jake ignored it. He moved toward the sound, stepping carefully over twisted metal and shattered stone. Behind a collapsed wall, he found her. A Velcrin child, no bigger than a human 8-year-old, trapped beneath a fallen beam. Her skin was the pale blue typical of her species, marked with the silver patterns that identified her family line. Blood seeped from a gash on her forehead, darker than human blood, almost purple. She looked up at Jake with 4 eyes that were far too aware, far too frightened. She tried to scramble away, but the beam held her pinned. "Contact!" Hayes shouted, raising his weapon. "Don't shoot." Jake dropped his rifle and raised his hands. "She's just a kid." "She's the enemy," Hayes said, but he lowered his gun slightly. Amy moved closer, curious. "She's injured. Probably been here since the evacuation." Jake knelt beside the child, moving slowly. She whimpered, trying to push him away with her small hands. Velcrin had 4 arms, though 2 of them were smaller, more delicate. The child used all 4 to try to defend herself. "Easy," Jake said softly, even though she couldn't understand him. "I'm going to help you." He pulled out his scanner, checking her vitals. Humans and Velcrin were different, but medics learned fast in war. Her breathing was rapid, signs of shock. The beam across her legs was crushing them slowly. If he didn't move it soon, she'd lose them. "Morrison, we need to move," Hayes said. "Command wants us back in 20 minutes. I need 5 minutes to get her free. She's Velcrin. Leave her." Jake looked up at his squad leader. "She's a child, and tomorrow she'll grow up to kill humans," Hayes said, but there was no real conviction in his voice. Even he looked uncomfortable. Jake turned back to the girl and started working. He braced himself against the beam and lifted. His muscles screamed, but the beam shifted slightly. The girl pulled her legs free and immediately tried to crawl away. She made it 3 feet before collapsing. Jake caught her before she hit the ground. She struggled in his arms, terrified, crying out words he couldn't understand. He held her gently but firmly, checking her legs. Both broken. She wouldn't be walking out of here. "We have to take her with us," Jake said. "Absolutely not," Hayes said. "Command will have our heads. We can't leave her here to die. Watch me." Amy stepped forward. "Maybe we can use her. Leverage or something. The Velcrin care about their young, right?" It wasn't the reason Jake wanted, but he'd take it. "Right. She could be valuable." Hayes considered this, then nodded slowly. "Fine. But you carry her, and if she slows us down, we leave her." Jake fashioned a quick splint for the child's legs, then lifted her carefully. She was lighter than he expected, her bones hollow like a bird's. She struggled less now, exhausted from pain and fear. Her 4 eyes watched him with confusion and terror. They moved through the ruins toward the extraction point. The girl, Jake decided to call her something, and girl felt wrong, whimpered with each step. He tried to keep his movement smooth, but war zones didn't allow for gentle travel. They were halfway to the rally point when the Velcrin appeared. 10 soldiers materialized from the shadows, their adaptive camouflage fading to reveal angular armor and weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, surrounding Jake's squad in seconds. "Contact!" Hayes shouted, and everything exploded into chaos. Plasma bolts lit up the ruins in blue and white. Jake's squad returned fire, their conventional bullets sparking off Velcrin shields. Jake dove behind a concrete pillar, cradling the child against his chest. She screamed and he curled around her, making himself as large as possible. A plasma bolt struck the pillar above his head, melting stone like wax. Another hit his shoulder, and pain exploded through his arm. He smelled burning flesh, his own, but he didn't move. The child pressed against him, trembling. "Fall back," Hayes ordered. The squad retreated, laying down covering fire. Jake should have run with them. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he looked down at the terrified child in his arms, and he knew he couldn't. A Velcrin soldier appeared around the pillar, weapon raised. Jake turned, putting his back to the alien, shielding the child completely. He closed his eyes and waited for the killing shot. It didn't come. Instead, he heard a sharp command in the Velcrin language. The shooting stopped. Jake opened his eyes and looked down at the child. She was staring past him, at something behind him. Her expression changed from terror to hope, and she cried out a single word that Jake didn't need to translate. "Mother." Heavy footsteps approached. Jake didn't move, didn't turn. He kept himself between the child and danger, even though he knew it was pointless now. "Turn around, human." The voice spoke in accented English, female and commanding. Jake slowly turned his head. The Velcrin who stood before him was taller than the soldiers, her armor marking her as an officer. Her silver facial patterns were more elaborate, indicating high rank. But Jake focused on her eyes, 4 eyes that were the same shade as the child's. "You protect Sira," the officer said. It wasn't a question. Jake nodded. "She was hurt. I couldn't leave her." The officer studied him for a long moment. Jake saw her gaze move over his wounds, the burns on his shoulder and arm, the blood soaking through his uniform. He'd been hit 3 more times while shielding the child, though he hadn't felt them in the moment. "You are wounded," the officer said. "She's wounded worse," Jake replied. Something changed in the officer's expression. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. She barked an order, and 2 Velcrin soldiers moved forward. Jake tensed, tightening his grip on the child, but they didn't raise their weapons. Instead, they reached for the girl. "No," Jake said instinctively. The officer held up one hand. "I am High Counselor Vena. Sira is my daughter. Give her to me." Jake looked down at the child, at Sira. She was reaching for her mother now, crying and calling out. Slowly, carefully, Jake handed her over. Vena took her daughter and held her close, examining her injuries with practiced efficiency. She spoke softly in her own language, soothing words that needed no translation. Then she looked back at Jake. "You took wounds meant for her." "Yes." "Why?" Jake's vision was starting to blur. Blood loss, probably. His legs felt weak. "Because she's a child, someone's daughter." He saw Vena's expression change again, but he couldn't read it. The world tilted sideways, and he realized he was falling. Strong hands caught him, Velcrin hands. The last thing he heard before darkness claimed him was Vena's voice, sharp and commanding. "Save him." Jake woke to softness. For 3 years he'd slept on military cots, transport ship bunks, and bare ground. Softness was unfamiliar and immediately suspicious. He opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him glowed with gentle blue light, organic-looking patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. Velcrin design, he was in enemy territory. Jake tried to sit up and pain lanced through his shoulder and chest. His hand went to the wounds automatically, but instead of burned flesh, he felt smooth bandages and healed skin beneath. How long had he been unconscious? "You wake, good." The voice came from his left. Jake turned his head carefully and saw a Velcrin male in white robes standing beside medical equipment. "A doctor, probably. Where am I?" Jake's throat felt rough. "Medical facility. Imperial District." The doctor approached with a scanner, checking Jake's vitals. "You heal well. Human bodies are resilient. The child, Sira, is she alive?" The doctor's expression softened slightly. "Yes, her legs are repaired. She asks about you." Relief flooded through Jake, stronger than any painkiller. That's good. Hi, Counselor Vena wishes to speak with you. Are you able? Jake nodded and the doctor helped him sit up. His body protested, but nothing felt broken anymore. Whatever the Velcrin had done to heal him, it was far beyond human medicine. The doctor left and Jake took stock of his situation. He was in a private room, comfortable and clean. Not a cell, not a torture chamber, just a room. His military uniform was gone, replaced by simple gray clothing that fit surprisingly well. The door opened and Vena entered. She looked different without armor. She wore robes of deep purple marked with silver, formal clothing that emphasized her status. Her forearms moved with natural grace, two clasped in front of her, two hanging at her sides. She studied Jake with those 4 eyes and he couldn't read her expression at all. You are recovered, she said. Thanks to you, I think. You ordered your soldiers to save me. I did. Vena moved closer, her posture radiating authority. Do you know why? No. In my culture, there is a sacred law. When someone saves the life of another's child through self-sacrifice, a debt is created. This debt is absolute. It cannot be ignored or dismissed. Jake shook his head. I don't want anything. I just wanted to help her, I know. I watched you. Vena's 4 hands moved in a gesture Jake didn't understand. My soldiers recorded the battle. You were shot 5 times. Each time you could have left Sira and saved yourself. Each time you chose to shield her instead. She was scared. She was enemy. Vena tilted her head. Your own squad left you. Your people would have abandoned my daughter to die, but you alone stayed. Jake didn't know what to say to that. It was true. Hayes and the others had followed orders, had done what soldiers were supposed to do in war. Jake was the one who'd broken protocol. I am High Counselor of the Northern Territories, Vena continued. I have significant power in the Velcrin Empire, but I also have enemies, those who see any mercy toward humans as weakness. I understand. You can't let me go. No. Vena's eyes fixed on him intensely. I will not let you go, but not for the reasons you think. She moved to the window, looking out over a city Jake had never seen before. Tall buildings of organic design rose toward a purple sky. Ships moved between them like schools of fish. There is an old custom, Vena said. Very old. When a noble's child is saved from certain death, the savior can be claimed as Velcaris, protected ward, part of the family under the house's protection. You want to claim me? It is the only way to keep you alive. Without this protection, hardliners in my government will demand your execution. You are human. You are enemy. But as Velcaris, you are untouchable. Jake processed this. So I'd be, what, a prisoner in your household? Not prisoner, ward. You would live with my family. Learn our ways. Be protected by our name. And if I refuse? Vena turned back to him. Then you die. Perhaps not today. Perhaps not tomorrow, but soon. My political enemies will ensure it. It wasn't really a choice then, but Jake found he didn't resent it. He'd made his choice when he stayed with Sira. Everything after that was just consequence. When do you make this claim? Jake asked. Tomorrow. Before the council. It will be controversial. That was probably an understatement. The door burst open and Sira rushed in. She moved with the quick energy of a child, her legs showing no sign of the breaks Jake had seen. She stopped when she saw him awake, her 4 eyes going wide. Vena said something sharp in Velcrin, probably a reprimand for bursting in, but Sira ignored her. She approached Jake slowly, cautiously, like he might disappear if she moved too fast. Jake smiled at her.
Hey there. Sira didn't speak.
She reached out with one small hand and gently touched his bandaged shoulder. Her expression was serious, concerned. Then she pulled something from her pocket and held it out to him. It was a drawing, done in colors that didn't quite match human art supplies. But Jake could make out the figures, a small Velcrin child and a human male, the human curved protectively around the child. Beneath the rubble and chaos Sira had drawn the moment he'd shielded her. She has been drawing this every day since the battle, Vena said softly. She wants you to know she remembers. Jake took the drawing carefully. His throat felt tight. Thank you, Sira. The child smiled then, a genuine smile that reminded Jake why he'd stayed. She said something in Velcrin, the words quick and musical. She calls you Kelmora, Vena translated. Shieldheart. It is a term of great respect among my people. Sira sat on the edge of Jake's bed, chattering away in Velcrin. She seemed to have forgotten he couldn't understand her. Or maybe she didn't care. She pulled out more drawings, showing him each one with pride. Vena watched them both with an expression Jake was starting to recognize. Sadness mixed with something else. Gratitude, maybe? Or guilt. Her father died in the first year of the war, Vena said quietly. Killed by human forces during the Battle of Meridian Station. I have raised Sira alone since then. She has not smiled like this in a very long time. Jake looked up at Vena. I'm sorry for your loss. And I am sorry for the wounds you bear from my soldiers' weapons. This war has taken much from both our peoples. More than it needed to. Jake agreed. Vena's 4 hands moved in another complex gesture. Perhaps. Or perhaps it needed to happen so that moments like this could occur, so that humans and Velkrin could see each other as something more than enemies. It was a nice thought. Jake hoped she was right. Sira tugged on his sleeve, pointing to another drawing. This one showed 3 figures, a Velkrin adult, a human, and a small child between them. All holding hands. Or trying to. The anatomy didn't quite work, but the intent was clear. She draws her wishes, Vena said. A family whole again. Jake studied the drawing, then looked at Sira. The child gazed back at him with hope in her 4 eyes. Hope that he could somehow fill the hole her father's death had left. Hope that was both touching and terrifying. I don't know if I can be what she needs, Jake admitted. You already are, Vena said. You have already given more than anyone could ask. You gave your blood, nearly gave your life. And you did it for a child of your enemy. That is not something Velkrin forget, Jake Morrison. It was the first time she'd used his name. Somehow that made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The door opened again and a Velkrin soldier entered. She spoke rapidly to Vena, her tone urgent. Vena's expression hardened. What's wrong? Jake asked. The council meets in 1 hour. Some members have learned you are here. They demand your immediate execution as an enemy combatant. Vena straightened, her authority reasserting itself. I must go and make my claim before they can act. Will they accept it? They must. The law is clear, but law and politics are not always the same thing. She moved toward the door, then paused. Sira will stay with you. Guard her if needed. Then she was gone, leaving Jake alone with the child. Sira didn't seem worried. She'd gone back to showing him drawings, explaining each one in words he couldn't understand, but meanings he could feel. Jake settled back against the pillows and listened to her chatter. Whatever came next, whatever the council decided, he'd made his choice. He'd chosen to protect this child, and he'd keep choosing it for as long as he could. Outside the window, the purple sky darkened toward evening. Ships continued their endless dance between buildings, and somewhere in this alien city, Vena fought for his life with nothing but old laws and personal honor. Jake hoped it would be enough. 3 months in a Velkrin household taught Jake more about the alien species than 3 years of war ever had. They weren't monsters. They were people with families and fears and hopes just like humans. That didn't make living among them easy. Jake stood in the garden courtyard, practicing Velkrin language exercises with a tutor named Keth. The language was difficult, with sounds humans weren't meant to make and grammar that twisted back on itself. But Jake was learning. Again, Keth said patiently. He was an older Velkrin. His silver patterns faded with age. The word for protection and the word for love share the same root. Say it correctly. Jake tried, mangling the pronunciation. Keth sighed but nodded. Better. You will master this eventually. Maybe in 10 years, Jake muttered. Perhaps 5 if you practice. Keth collected his materials. High Counselor Vena wishes to see you in her study when we are finished. Jake's stomach tightened. Formal meetings with Vena still made him nervous even after 3 months. She'd successfully claimed him as Velkaris, but the political situation remained unstable. He found her in the study, reviewing holographic documents that floated in the air. She dismissed them with a gesture when he entered. Sit, she said, gesturing to a chair designed for Velkrin anatomy. Jake had learned to make them work, sort of. Keth says I'm improving, Jake offered. Keth is kind. Your accent is still terrible. But she said it without harshness, almost with affection. However, your ability to communicate is not why I called you here. She pulled up a new hologram, this one showing news footage. Jake saw himself in the image walking through the household grounds with Sira. The child was laughing, holding his hand. This image has spread across Velkrin networks, Vena said. Some see it as proof that peace is possible. Others see it as betrayal of our warrior culture. I didn't know we were being recorded. Everything is recorded now. You have become a symbol, Jake, like it or not. Jake watched the hologram play. Sierra looked so happy. It reminded him why all the difficulty was worth it. There have been threats, Vena continued. Against you. Against Sierra, against myself. Hardliners who believe I have dishonored the Velcrin Empire by protecting a human. I can leave, Jake said immediately. If my being here puts you and Sierra in danger, no. Vena's voice was sharp. You misunderstand. I do not tell you this to send you away. I tell you so you are aware. So you can be careful. Jake nodded slowly. What do you want me to do? Continue as you have been. Be yourself. Care for Sierra. Learn our ways. Vena's 4 eyes met his. And perhaps in time help me understand humans as you have come to understand us. You want to know about Earth? I want to know about you, your people, why you did what you did. Vena leaned forward. I have studied human military psychology. Soldiers are taught to follow orders to see enemies as targets. Yet you saw a child. Only a child, why? Jake thought about it. I don't know if I can explain it. When I saw her trapped and scared, I couldn't walk away. It didn't matter that she was Velcrin. She needed help. But your species and mine have been killing each other for 3 years. We have destroyed your colonies. You have destroyed ours. Millions dead on both sides. How does one human look past all that? I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a very good soldier. Vena made a sound that might have been a laugh. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are something better than a soldier. Before Jake could respond, alarms blared throughout the compound. Vena was on her feet instantly, her hand going to a communication device on her wrist. A guard burst through the door. Hi, Counselor. Armed intruders in the outer gardens. They are moving toward the residence. Where is Sierra? Vena demanded. In her room, my lady. Lock down the residence. Get her to the safe room. Vena turned to Jake. Come with me. They moved quickly through the corridors. Jake had no weapon, no armor. But he followed Vena anyway, his heart pounding. They reached Sierra's room just as 3 Velcrin in combat gear burst through the window. The intruders raised weapons aiming at Vena. Jake didn't think. He threw himself forward, putting his body between Vena and the weapons. He felt the impact of projectiles slamming into his back and chest, the burning pain of energy weapons scoring his flesh. But he didn't fall. The pain was intense, but he stayed upright, arms spread wide, blocking as much area as he could. Vena's guards arrived seconds later, engaging the intruders. The fight was brief and brutal. 2 intruders died. 1 was captured. Jake collapsed once the threat was neutralized. He was bleeding badly, his vision going dark at the edges. He heard Vena shouting orders, felt her hands on him trying to stop the bleeding. Sierra, he managed to gasp. We're safe. She is safe. Vena's face appeared above him, her expression twisted with something that looked like anguish. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep almost dying for us? Someone has to, Jake whispered, then passed out. He woke 2 days later in the medical facility again. Vena was sitting beside his bed and she looked exhausted. When she saw him wake, relief flooded her features. You are an idiot, she said. Probably, Jake agreed. His voice was rough. Those weapons could have killed you. Should have killed you. You have no armor, no shields. Just flesh. Is Sierra okay? Yes, thanks to you again. Vena's 4 hands clenched. The intruders were hardline military members. They planned to kill all 3 of us and make it look like a human attack. They wanted to restart the war with renewed fury. Did it work? No. The captured assassin confessed everything. The conspiracy is being exposed even now. Many high-ranking officials are being arrested. Vena's expression shifted. You have done more than save my daughter, Jake. You have exposed corruption at the heart of our government. Jake tried to sit up and Vena helped him. I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to keep you both safe. I know. That is what makes it powerful. Vena was quiet for a moment. Public opinion is shifting. The footage of you shielding me has spread across every network. Many Velcrin are questioning the war now. They ask how we can call humans monsters when one human has repeatedly sacrificed himself for Velcrin lives. I'm not special, Jake protested. Anyone would have done the same? No, they would not. That is the point. Vena's 4 eyes studied him intensely. You have changed things, Jake Morrison. You have changed me. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Sira burst into the room. She'd been crying, her eyes red. When she saw Jake awake, she ran to him and climbed onto the bed, burying her face against his chest and sobbing. Jake held her gently, making soothing sounds. He looked at Vena over Sira's head, questioning. She thought you would die? Vena explained softly. She has lost one father already. She could not bear to lose another. The word hung in the air. Father. Sira saw him as a father, and looking at Vena's expression, he realized she saw him as something too, something more than just Velkaris, more than just the human who'd saved her daughter. We need to talk, Vena said, when you are well enough. About your place in this family, about what comes next. Jake nodded, still holding Sira. The child had calmed, her sobs fading to quiet hiccups. She wouldn't let go of him. I'm not going anywhere, Jake promised her, even though she couldn't understand the words. I'm right here. Vena's expression softened in a way Jake had never seen before. She reached out with one of her smaller hands and gently touched his face, a gesture that was shockingly intimate in Velkrin culture. Yes, she said quietly. You are. Outside the window, the purple sky was clear and calm. Somewhere on this world and others, humans and Velkrin were still fighting, still killing each other over territory and pride and fear. But in this room, in this moment, there was peace. There was family. And there was hope that maybe, just maybe, the rest of the galaxy could find the same. Jake closed his eyes and held Sira close, feeling Vena's hand still resting gently against his cheek. He'd taken every blow meant for them, and somehow impossibly it had become worth it. Jake stood on the balcony overlooking the city, watching the sunrise paint the purple sky in shades of orange and gold. 6 months with the Velkrin had changed him in ways he was still discovering. He understood their language now, could read their expressions, knew their customs. But he still felt like a human pretending to be something else. Footsteps behind him. Vena joined him at the railing, her formal robes replaced by simpler clothing. In private moments like these, she was less high counselor and more just. Herself. You did not sleep, she observed. Too much thinking. About what? Jake hesitated. About where I belong. Vena was quiet for a moment. I have something to tell you. The human government has made contact. They wish to speak with you. Jake's heart jumped. When? Tomorrow. Through secure channels. They claim they want to bring you home. Vena's tone was carefully neutral. They say you have been held against your will. Have I been? You know the answer to that better than I do. Jake did know. He'd been given choices as much as war allowed. He could have fought harder to leave, could have tried to escape. But he hadn't. Because of Sira. Because of Vena. Because somehow, this alien household had become something like home. What will you tell them? Vena asked. I don't know yet. She nodded, accepting this. Whatever you choose, I will support, even if it means letting you go. That night, Jake couldn't sleep at all. He kept thinking about Earth, about his family, back home his sister who'd probably given him up for dead, about his friends from before the war, the normal life he'd left behind when he enlisted. But he also thought about Sira, about her laughter when he read her stories, the way she held his hand when they walked through the gardens, how she'd started, calling him Papa in Velkrin without even thinking about it. And he thought about Vena, about the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching, about conversations that lasted late into the night, about shared meals and quiet moments, about the way his heart had started doing stupid things whenever she was near. The communication came through the next afternoon. Jake sat in Vena's private office, facing a holographic screen showing Captain Lisa Grant, his former commanding officer. Morrison, she said, and her voice was a punch to the gut. It's good to see you alive. Captain Grant, it's been a while. 6 months. We thought you were dead until the Velkrin leaked footage of you living in a counselor's household. Grant's expression was hard to read. Are you being held prisoner? No. Are you being coerced in any way? No. Grant leaned forward. Jake, listen to me carefully. Command wants you back. They're willing to negotiate for your release. You've been through trauma, possible brainwashing. We understand. I haven't been brainwashed, Jake interrupted. I'm here because I chose to be. You chose to live with the enemy? I chose to protect a child. Everything else followed from that. Grant was quiet for a moment. The situation has changed back home. There are people who see you as a traitor. Others who see you as an opportunity. Peace talks are being discussed, Jake, real peace talks, and you're right in the middle of it. Jake's pulse quickened. Peace talks? Yes. The footage of you protecting that Velcrin family has spread everywhere. Human and Velcrin. It's changing minds, making people question if this war is worth continuing. Grant's expression softened slightly. You could come home, Jake. Help us build a real peace. You understand them now in ways our diplomats never could. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. To go home. To see Earth again. To be human among humans. And if I come back, Jake asked slowly, what happens to them? To Sira and Vena? That's not your concern anymore. Yes, it is. Grant sighed. You can't save everyone, Morrison. You're one man. I know. But I can save them. And that matters. The conversation ended badly. Grant gave him 24 hours to decide. Return to humanity, or commit to the Velcrin. No more middle ground. Jake found Vena in the garden, supervising Sira's studies. The child was practicing writing, her small tongue sticking out in concentration. She looked up when Jake approached and smiled brightly. Papa? Look, I wrote the whole verse without mistakes. Jake examined her work and praised her, his heart aching. Then he met Vena's eyes. She'd been listening somehow. She knew. Walk with me, Vena said quietly. They left Sira with her tutor and walked through the gardens in silence. Finally, Vena spoke. You should go back to them. What? To your people, to Earth. You have been here 6 months, Jake. You have given us so much. But you should not have to give up your entire life. Vena stopped, turning to face him. I have been selfish keeping you here, using old laws and political necessity as excuses. But the truth is, I wanted you to stay. She paused, struggling with the words. I wanted you. Jake's breath caught. Vena, let me finish. Her 4 hands moved in agitation. In my culture, when someone is claimed as Velcaris, the relationship can evolve, can become something deeper, a bonding, a mate pairing. She met his eyes. I wish to bond with you, Jake Morrison, to make you truly part of this family, not as ward, but as partner, as father to Sira, as my mate. The world seemed to stop. Jake stared at her, unable to process what she'd just said. But, Vena continued, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes, I will not ask this of you if it means taking away your humanity, if it means you can never go home. You deserve to choose freely, without guilt or obligation. I don't know what to say, Jake admitted. Then say nothing now. Think. Decide. Whatever you choose, know that Sira and I will cherish the time we had with you. That night, Sira came to Jake's room. She climbed onto his bed and curled up against him, something she did when she was scared or sad. Papa, are you leaving? She asked in Velcrin. Jake's heart broke. I might have to. Why? Don't you love us? I do. I love you very much. Then stay. Please stay. Her 4 eyes filled with tears. I don't want another Papa to go away. Jake held her close, unable to speak. She fell asleep in his arms, trusting and safe. And Jake realized that his choice had already been made. Had been made months ago, maybe. Had been made the moment he decided to shield her from harm. The next morning, Jake contacted Captain Grant. I'm staying, he said simply. Grant's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. The military will list you as missing, presumed dead. You'll have no citizenship, no legal existence. I understand. And if the war continues, you'll be considered a traitor. Then work for peace, Captain. Make sure the war doesn't continue. Grant was quiet for a long moment. For what it's worth, Morrison, I think you're incredibly brave, or incredibly stupid. Maybe both. Probably both, Jake agreed. After the call ended, Jake found Vena. She was in her study, staring at reports she wasn't really reading. She looked up when he entered, hope and fear warring in her expression. I accept, Jake said. If the offer still stands, I want to bond with you. Vena stood slowly. You are certain? No, I'm terrified. This is insane and I'm giving up everything I knew. Jake moved closer. But I've learned something these past 6 months. Home isn't a place. It's people. And my people are here now. You and Sira. Vena's eyes shimmered with something that might have been tears. She crossed the space between them and took his hands in hers, all 4 of her hands holding both of his. The bonding ceremony will be public, she said. It will cause controversy. Some will hate you more for this. Some will hate me. I know. We will have to work together to build peace. It will not be easy. Many on both sides want the war to continue. I know that too. And you still choose this? Choose us? Jake smiled. I chose you the moment I stayed with Sira. Everything since then has just been me catching up. Vena pulled him into an embrace and Jake wrapped his arms around her. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet of the study. Outside, the city moved on. Ships flew between buildings. Life continued. And somewhere, in the house, a little girl who'd lost her father had found a new one. A human who'd lost his way had found a family. And 2 species that had been killing each other for 3 years had found a reason to hope. It wasn't peace yet, but it was a beginning. The bonding ceremony was held in the Grand Hall of the Imperial Council, witnessed by thousands in person and millions more across both human and Velcrin networks. Jake stood in formal robes that felt strange on his human body, facing Vena, who wore the ceremonial armor of her house. Sira stood between them, holding both their hands, her face beaming with joy. The ceremony was conducted in ancient Velcrin, words that Jake had memorized but only half understood. But he understood the important part. When Vena placed the bonding mark on his forehead, a silver pattern that mimicked her own family lines, he became hers and she became his family partner's mates. The reaction across both civilizations was immediate and explosive. Some humans called Jake a traitor who'd abandoned his species for an alien. Some Velcrin called Vena weak for bonding with an enemy. But others, many others, saw something different. They saw hope. Within weeks, the official peace talks began. Jake found himself thrust into a role he'd never wanted: diplomat. He sat in rooms with human and Velcrin officials, translating not just words but intentions, emotions, cultural nuances that others missed. The Velcrin High Command isn't saying they want total surrender, Jake explained to the human delegation during one tense session. When they say resolution of territorial claims, they mean they want neutral zones where neither side has control. Admiral Scott frowned. How do you know that's what they mean? Because I live with them. I eat with them. I know how they think. Jake looked around the table at the skeptical human faces. Look, you can trust me or not, but I'm the only human who's actually bothered to understand the Velcrin beyond how to kill them. It was harsh, but it got their attention. Slowly, grudgingly, both sides began to listen. The negotiations took months. There were setbacks, arguments, moments when everything nearly fell apart. Extremists on both sides tried to sabotage the talks with terrorist attacks. Jake and Vena survived 2 assassination attempts in the first month alone, but through it all, Jake kept working. He drafted documents that both species could accept. He mediated disputes. He reminded both sides of what they were fighting for, not territory or pride, but the chance to stop burying their dead. Meanwhile, life in Vena's household continued. Sira thrived, growing taller and more confident. She started attending a special school that mixed human and Velcrin children, one of the first of its kind. She made friends from both species and came home each day with stories about her adventures. Jake found himself settling into domestic life in ways he'd never imagined. He learned to cook Velcrin food, terrible at first but improving. He helped Sira with homework. He supported Vena through the endless political battles she faced. And late at night, when Sira was asleep and the household was quiet, he and Vena would sit together and talk. About their past, their fears, their hopes, about the strange path that had brought a human medic and a Velcrin counselor together. "Do you ever regret it?" Vena asked him one night. They were in the garden watching the stars. "Giving up Earth? Your humanity?" "I didn't give up my humanity," Jake said. "I just expanded my family. But your people see you as traitor. Some do. Others are starting to understand." Jake squeezed her hand. "And honestly, I'd rather be hated for choosing love than praised for choosing hate." Vena leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You are a strange human, Jake Morrison. I'm the only human you're bonded to, so you're stuck with me." She laughed, and the sound made Jake smile. 6 months ago, he'd never heard her laugh. Now it was his favorite sound. The breakthrough in negotiations came unexpectedly. Jake was mediating a discussion about war reparations when Sira burst into the room, breaking every protocol. "Papa, Mama, come quick! There's something on the news." They rushed to the nearest screen. The footage showed human and Velcrin rescue workers working together to save colonists, trapped after a massive earthquake on a neutral world. No one had ordered the cooperation. It had just happened naturally when people saw others in need. Jake watched humans and Velcrin pulling survivors from rubble together, sharing medical supplies, comforting the injured regardless of species. And he saw the negotiators around him watching too, their expressions changing. "That," Jake said quietly, "is what peace looks like." 2 weeks later, the treaty was signed. It wasn't perfect. There were compromises that made both sides uncomfortable. Territorial disputes that remained unresolved. Questions about war crimes and justice that had no easy answers. But the killing stopped. The war was over. The signing ceremony was held on neutral ground, a space station equidistant between human and Velcrin territory. Jake stood with Vena and Sira, watching leaders from both sides sign the historic document. Captain Grant was there, part of the human delegation. She approached Jake after the ceremony. "Morrison," she said formally. "Captain." They stared at each other for a moment. Then Grant extended her hand. "You did it. You actually helped end the war." Jake shook her hand. "We all did it. Maybe, but you started it. When you decided one alien child mattered more than orders." Grant glanced at Vena and Sira. "They're your family now?" "Yes." "Then I'm happy for you." Grant smiled slightly. "For what it's worth, Earth Command has officially pardoned you. You're not a traitor anymore, just a citizen who chose a different path. I appreciate that." Grant left, and Jake turned to find Vena watching him. "Your people have forgiven you." "Some of them. That's a start." Life in the post-war galaxy was strange and new. Trade routes opened between human and Velcrin space. Cultural exchange programs began. The school Sira attended expanded, becoming a model for others. Jake and Vena worked together to establish humanitarian programs, sending joint human-Velcrin teams to aid disaster zones, provide medical care, build infrastructure on damaged worlds. It was hard work, often frustrating but meaningful. And then, 2 years after the war ended, Vena told Jake she was pregnant. It should have been impossible. Humans and Velcrin were too biologically different, but Vena's doctors confirmed it. Somehow, against all odds, they were going to have a child. The news spread like wildfire. Scientists from both species scrambled to understand how this was possible. Some called it a miracle. Others called it proof that the two species were more compatible than anyone had realized. Jake just called it terrifying. "I don't know how to be a father to a hybrid child," he admitted to Vena one night. She was resting, her hand on her still flat stomach. "You are already father to Sira," Vena reminded him. "And you are perfect at it. That's different." Sira was already here. "This one I'm responsible for from the start. We are both responsible, together." Vena took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "And we will figure it out together, just as we have figured out everything else." 9 months later, Cade was born. He was small, with 4 arms like Velcrin but proportions more human. His skin was pale like Jake's but marked with faint silver patterns like Vena's. He had 2 eyes instead of 4, but they were a striking mix of both species' coloring. He was perfect. Jake held his son for the first time in the hospital, Vena exhausted but smiling beside him, Sira peering at her new brother with fascination. And Jake felt something settle in his chest, a sense of rightness that he'd been searching for his entire life. This was his family, strange, blended, impossible, but the years passed. Cade grew, developing abilities that surprised everyone. Able to eat both human and Velcrin food, comfortable in different atmospheric pressures, learning both languages simultaneously. Scientists studied him carefully with permission, trying to understand the implications. Other hybrid children began to appear as more humans, and Velcrin formed relationships. Cade wasn't unique anymore, but he was the first, a symbol of what was possible when species chose cooperation over conflict. Sira grew into a young adult, brilliant and passionate. She studied interspecies relations and became an advocate for unity, traveling between human and Velcrin worlds to give speeches and organize programs. Jake watched her address a crowd of thousands once, speaking about the importance of choosing compassion over fear, and he felt a deep pride. This was the scared child he'd pulled from rubble. Now she was changing the galaxy. She gets that from you, Vena said, standing beside him. She gets it from both of us. Vena smiled. Perhaps. They stood together watching Sira speak, while Cade played nearby with friends, both human and Velcrin children who'd grown up in a world without war. Jake thought about the moment that had changed everything, seeing a trapped child and choosing to help instead of walking away. Such a small choice, such enormous consequences. He'd taken every blow meant for Vena's daughter. He'd nearly died, multiple times for a family that wasn't his, but they were his now, and he wouldn't change a single thing. Do you ever miss it? Vena asked softly. Your old life? Jake considered. Sometimes, but I don't regret this life. Even though it's been difficult, especially because it's been difficult. Jake wrapped his arm around Vena's waist. The best things in life usually are. They stood together watching their children, in a galaxy that was slowly learning to build instead of destroy, to connect instead of divide. The war had taken so much from so many. But from the ashes had come something new, something better. Jake Morrison had been a medic who just wanted to help people. Now he was a father, a husband, a diplomat.